concerned.
Liverpool. Now we will talk to my nanny and my granddad Eddie. Nanny and Eddie were growing up in the 1930s. What was it like growing up in the 1930s?
It was pretty terrible growing up at that time. There wasn't that much very much money. Wages were very low and there were no extras like there are now. And people just ate whatever they could eat, and they didn't know ahead of them was the war, but they ate an awful lot of bread and margarine for their tea, or bread and jam for the tea, but they couldn't have bread and margarine and jam. People would have a treat on a Saturday with Sayers bags. You could buy them for fourpence and you didn't know if there was a beautiful cream cake in, or 4 buns, or 2 cream cakes, but you queued up for those. Everybody was poor, but half of the people didn't have jobs. At the end of the 30s, 3/4 of the people didn't have jobs, and they were on what they called on the parish. Do you want to ask me anything else? Schools or...
What was it like in the schools?
Well, everybody went to a council school, and they went at 5 years old. Nobody went before they were 5, and if they were not quite 5 in the September, they had to wait till next January when they were 5 1/4. And they went in the babies class, And a year later they went in the middle class where they learned to read and write and knit. And sew. And the third year they were sorted out who was going to be in the scholarship class. So after the first 3 years, they were then just on 8 years old and they were sorted. And one lot went into the B class and the other half went into the A class and stayed there for 3 years, the teacher going up with them each year, preparing them for the review, which was in the March, and the scholarship, which was in the April. The others went on to a secondary modern when they left that school at 11.
Why would boys need to be knitting?
Knitting? Well, I made a mistake there. The girls learned to knit and it was always a mixed class, and the boys didn't learn to knit, they learned woodwork. I was in a house and it was a corporation house and they'd been built 2 years before in 1928. These were the houses that the government thought houses fit for heroes to live in, because most of the men were ones that had been in the war and survived the war and married and had children. So all the houses where I lived in the corporation estate were built about 1928, and they all had a mum and a dad and lots of children, like tribes. Not many had 2 children, like your family. Most had 4, 5, 6, 7. One lady had 12 children and a lady at the top had 17 children.
17?
Yes. The Catholic children were the most. They'd have 13 or 12 when they went to St. Teresa's school, and it was so big we used to have another playground on the roof of the school. But the ordinary Church of England and the Orange people, they had 6 children to 8 children each.
Brothers and sisters, and how many were there?
Well, I was the third of 7 children, and there were 5 girls and then a boy. When my mother went in to have the boy, we all had to go into a home. So that meant Jerry, Gladys, Margaret, Dolly, Vi, which were 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, all went into Olive Mount Cottage homes, in a different home each, while my mother went in to have that baby. But most babies were born at home, but a difficult one, which my mother was having, went into the hospital. Father's money didn't go up at all, not even a farthing, when another baby was born, and there were no child allowances. So we lived on clothes that were hand-me-downs. And so by the time you got the shoes, they were pretty slipshod, which means worn down at the heel, and a hole in the sole which you put cardboard in. But everyone was the same, hardly, except the Jewish families that only had 1 to 2 children. They were posh, but everyone else were all in the same boat, all poor. So you couldn't go out and eat ice creams and crisps and sweets and sit down in the house except to read books, because there wasn't any radio except the people that had a little bit of money in a small family. There was only the books that you read, or little flash things in the churches that you saw, like Peter Pan and things like that.
What did you used to eat every week?
Well, we did get 3 meals a day. That looks very nice, you're a footballer. We did get 3 meals a day, but breakfast would be porridge, and sometimes if your mother was too busy, it was burnt porridge, but you didn't mind, you scraped the bottom of the pan because you were glad to put something in your tummy. And dinner time, you would run home and have a glass of water and a crust if you could get it, because that was the thicker slices of the bread. And you had margarine on, which they called Maggie Ann, or you had plum jam on, which was the cheapest, and you bought a £2, but you couldn't have margarine and jam on it. At tea time, if you were lucky, you had a fry-up, or your mum would make a stew, and she'd get ½ a pound of shin beef. This is of the shin leg of the cow, which is tough, so it would take 2.5 to 3 hours, but you put lots and lots of carrots and turnips and onions and an oxo cube and salt and pepper. Lots and lots of spadiators, they were potatoes, and if someone came unexpectedly, they'd put an extra potato in, and you had that with lots and lots of dry bread in the middle. But you didn't have pudding except on Sunday, and then you had rice pudding, and we all queued up to have the skin.
Arrangements at home.
Well, the sleeping arrangements was, in my house, the medium bedroom my mother and father slept in, and the latest baby, and the next bedroom would have 4 in it. Jerry and Gladys at one end, and Dolly and Vi at the other. So on the pillow was a pair of feet, a head, a pair of feet and a head. And you had to keep very still because you had coats on the bed, and if the coats fell off you were cold, but you're never freezing cold because you snuggled up to each other.
On the bed.
Well, when people first got married, they'd get little presents if they were lucky, and like a pair of sheets or a blanket or a counterpane. There were no such things as duvets, but as they got poorer and poorer, they would pawn them in Morris's pawn shop, and they would put them in on a Monday for about 3p or 4p, and then on the Friday they'd get them out when the husband brought home the wages. But a lot of times there wasn't enough money to get them out, and they couldn't, and so you landed up with lots of coats with buckles and buttons on. And in the night sometimes you were very stiff because you were laying on a big button or you were laying on a buckle, and people were dragging the bit of coat off you and you were dragging it up there, so there were lots of fights in the bed. And so the springs went, so the springs were tied up with string, and 4 of us in that room, girls, and 2 in the other room, and the mum and dad and baby in the other, because one was only a box room, only tiny.
What did your mum and dad do when you were naughty?
Well, that depends.
We had a good hiding, or we got locked in the coal hole for half an hour or longer if they forgot you were in there, because when there's lots of children you don't see all of them if they're all around. So you did get a lot of good hidings, and if you didn't come in as soon as dusk came down, that's between the daylight and the dark, and you stayed under the lamppost, when you got in, you got your father's belt and he took it off, and all you hoped, you kept your fingers crossed that he wouldn't use the buckle end on you and he'd use the other end, and then straight to bed without a cup of water.
Did you get the belt a lot?
Did you get the bed?
Did you get the belt a lot?
Get about a lot?
No, did you get the belt a lot?
Well, quite a lot actually, because when a father's been working a long time, maybe 48 or more hours, and maybe extra hours for overtime, and children misbehave just a little bit, because the father's tired out and wondering about money and worried about the rent, then you got more belt that you would have had if you were better off, yes. We got the belt about twice a week, but we got hit. And Mum used to say it was a go-along, because when she hit you, you did go along very fast, because your legs wouldn't stop.
What about 1936?
Well, in the mid-30s, although England had won the war in 1918, and we had won, and we had made Germany very small, and everyone wasn't to make arms, a chap called Adolf Hitler came to power, and as soon as he came into power, he started making motorways. But that was good, because people got work. What they didn't know was he was making them so he could move his troops in 1939 from one city to another very fast and conquer as many countries as he could. We knew all this was going on, but nobody did anything about it. So he carried on doing this, and then we heard that he was very harsh with Jews who were very hard working and had more money and shops than other people, and suddenly some of them would vanish and some more would vanish, but nobody did anything at all about it. And this went on from 36, 37, 38, and then England went over 2 or 3 times. Neville Chamberlain was the Prime Minister, to say to him, look here, will we sign peace in our time? And he said yes, but inside he was just laughing, because he just said it was a piece of paper. And so Hitler took away part of another country, and then he went to Poland and took that, and so we had to declare war on Germany.
What happened in school in 1939?
Well, people knew in 1938 and 39 this war was coming, and it did come early in September 39. So they'd already been round houses and given Anderson air raid shelters made of metal, and people like us that had just had children and one mother and no man or big brother, they dug in the garden, dug all the flowers and all the lovely bushes up and put them deep into the ground and put sods on top. So from the top, from the German aeroplanes looking down, they couldn't see anything. And they put bunks in there, and people were supposed to go in there every time the sirens went to say the